Hello, my name is Leonard. This is the Symantec Enterprise Vault 10 for Exchange Administration, Lesson 15, Expanding the Environment. What you're going to see is that as your Enterprise Vault environment grows, you're going to want to make sure that you have fault tolerance or reliability built in. So the first section that we're going to look at is maintaining this availability for your Enterprise Vault, first through a manual process which is called the building blocks model, as well as a brief introduction to the clustering environment. Then the next thing that happens is not only do you want to maintain this high availability, but as your system grows, you're going to want to look at or consider some various different topologies for arranging where your Enterprise Vault servers are going to be in relationship to your Exchange environment. So we'll go through and look at some multiple server environments and a distributed Enterprise Vault environment. So first, maintaining the availability for the Enterprise Vault, we're going to look at being able to build a failover to a secondary Enterprise Vault server. And in the first example we're going to consider is considered building blocks. And with the building blocks, we're going to configure multiple Enterprise Vault servers so that they can fail over if one Enterprise Vault server were in fact to crash. Each one of the servers in the building block configuration must run all of the Enterprise Vault services locally. It is a self-contained unit of functionality for a given set of users. The SQL server must be remote. It cannot be on the Enterprise Vault server. You must use network storage for all of your Enterprise Vault data, so none of the data can be local to the server that fails. You must have a domain name server alias or DNS server alias, and it can be used for a hardware server migration or disaster recovery once you have it set up. So let's go through and look at how we're going to be using this building blocks to help us with failover. Now again, this is a manual process, so there's manual actions involved in this particular process. We're going to look at two different scenarios. Our first scenario is going to be an active scenario where the server 1 and server 2 are both actively archiving items and are connected to that remote SQL server. What's going to happen is that server 1 will fail. When server 1 fails, I will have to go into the DNS manager and I will have to have the server 1 alias point to server 2. Once I have the DNS alias point to server 2, I will then run the update services locations tool to let the Enterprise Vault environment know now that Enterprise Vault server 2 is providing the Enterprise Vault functionality that server 1 had provided. Once I've done that, then server 2 will have access to those network resources that server 1 was using, and as far as the system is concerned, I didn't lose the Enterprise Vault functionality. Now again, you can see that there were two manual actions here, updating the DNS as well as running the update service locations tool. But it is giving you the capability of failing over. The disadvantage, though, of using the active failover model is that now server 2 is doing twice the work. If I need to, though, I can, in fact, once I fix server 1, get the services back to server 1. What I will do is I will basically go back to the DNS management tool, repoint the server 1 alias back to the physical server 1, run the update service locations tool again, and then everything will be back the way that it was, having the two Enterprise Vault servers sharing the Enterprise Vault workload. The next model is typically called an active-passive failover model, and in this particular model we're going to introduce some number of additional Enterprise Vault servers. In this particular case here, we're going to set up a DNS alias to point to server X, whatever number there happens to be out there. If again server 1 were the server to fail, I will go to server 1 for DNS alias and point that to the server X. I will go to the server X, run the update service locations tool again, and again now server X will have all the access to all the resources that server 1 was using previously. And now because I've used a active-passive failover model, server 2 is not suffering from any additional workload, so therefore I should not see any change in my performance. Next option for setting up and having high availability is to configure it for automatic failover. Typically, when we're talking about an automatic failover type of an environment, we're talking about clustering. Enterprise Vault will fit into either a Veritas cluster server environment, and for the Veritas cluster server, it supports up to 32 nodes. We can set those nodes up to be in different combinations of active and passive. We also can go through and specify a global cluster remote site failover capability. If you do not wish to use the Veritas cluster server, we can also use the Microsoft failover cluster environment. When we are setting up Enterprise Vault to work in a cluster environment, and in this particular example, we're showing you what the interface looks like for the Veritas cluster server. When you go through and look at it, we have the different sections for the various services that are needed for Enterprise Vault. So if something were to fail over, and in this particular case, we're starting off running on EVN1, we could fail over to EVN2 in our clustered environment. What would happen is that the resources for the basic infrastructure would start up first. Then I would go and start up the Enterprise Vault admin and the Enterprise Vault directory services. And then I would start all the other services, such as the shopping service, task controller service, indexing service as well. So again, this doesn't go through all the details of setting up and configuring clustering for Enterprise Vault, but it does show you that Enterprise Vault will readily fit into a clustered type of an environment. So that's the availability portion of this particular lesson. Now we're going to move into scaling out and getting bigger and bigger, and some different topologies that are available for you as your Enterprise Vault environment gets larger. Basically, you're going to set it up in one of three different types of configurations. One would be centralized. This has all the Enterprise Vault servers in one location, but again, you need to have adequate bandwidth for all the different servers in that location. We can have a decentralized, where the Enterprise Vault servers are in multiple geographical locations, and even more of a concern besides the geographical location is that those geographical locations are connected with low-speed connections. We can have a hybrid of the two. Typically in the IT world, we never end up with just one or another. We have to combine things, so you may find yourself in a hybrid environment that consists of both a centralized and decentralized, which typically converts into what we call a hub and spoke type of a model. One of the topologies that we discussed in the previous slide is the centralized deployment. In a centralized deployment, you can see that the Enterprise Vault server, the SQL servers, and the Exchange servers are all connected with a high-speed connection. This also will help if you have your Active Directory domain controllers and global catalog servers within the same Active Directory site. The idea here is that with this environment, I can have one or more Enterprise Vault servers, but we're all connected with an adequate network connectivity speed on this local area network, and our recommended minimum for that would be a 100 megabit per second network. The next type of a deployment topology would be a decentralized deployment. In this particular example, we have a Site A, and with Site A, we're talking about all the items in that particular site have high-speed connections over a local area network. We have Site B, which also has high-speed connections all over the local area network, but the connection between Site A and Site B is controlled over a slow-speed, wide area network. So in this example here, we've got our Enterprise Vault and SQL server, as well as one Exchange server in Site A, and in Site B, we have a Enterprise Vault server, an Exchange server, and some local area storage for our Enterprise Vault server partitions and indexes. And of course, the last one we mentioned was a hybrid deployment, where for some maybe branch type of offices, you have in slow speed connections, but you have the main data center maybe in New York or Dallas or something, or some location in the world, and they all have a high speed connectivity. So you end up doing a hybrid combination with Enterprise Vault in the individual locations, where you have the slow speed connections between that centralized location, which has the high speed connections. In this lesson, we learned about scaling an Enterprise Vault environment. We also looked at how to set up Enterprise Vault for server failover. Our references include the Administrative Console Help System, our Installing and Configuring Introduction and Planning Guide, as well as the Administrator's Guide, And also part of the planning for the building blocks is included in the installation course with some discussion of the clustering as well.